The bell above the door jingled as Keanu Reeves walked into the dealership, his presence unnoticed by the bustling sales staff. The place looked ordinary. Polished floors, rows of shiny cars with price tags still gleaming in the sunlight. But behind the scenes, something was off. The air buzzed with an unsettling tension, and the manager, barking orders to his team, didn't see him come in. Inside, the dealership was a typical luxury car showroom, filled with the glimmer of high-end vehicles. The scent of leather mixed with fresh coffee from the staff lounge. A perfect backdrop for customers to make life-changing decisions. But this wasn't just any day. Today, the dealership was about to make a huge mistake. If you want to know how this unexpected encounter turns into a shocking twist, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for the rest of the story. Behind the shiny desk, Mr. Dawson, the manager, was having a day. One of those days where nothing seemed to go right. He was exhausted, annoyed by endless calls and the pressure to make sales quotas. And now, here came another potential customer. He didn't look like much. Plain clothes, no flashy accessories. Just another person who couldn't afford what he was selling, right? Or so Dawson thought. Unbeknownst to him, the person standing in front of him, Keanu Reeves, wasn't just another regular buyer. He wasn't just another rich guy looking to browse. No, Keanu was about to make an entrance no one would forget. But for now, Dawson was too busy with his own frustrations to notice. Little did he know, he was about to kick out the new owner of the entire dealership. Mr. Dawson had always believed in the grind. He was a man who lived by the motto, the harder you work, the better your rewards. And to him, rewards meant success. He'd climbed his way up the ladder, from a modest position at a small dealership to the manager of one of the largest luxury car showrooms in town. But somewhere along the way, the climb became an obsession. The success he'd dreamed of had turned into a cage, one that kept him tethered to a never-ending cycle of sales, targets, and stress. Dawson wasn't a bad person. He wasn't. But over time, the pressures of running a business and dealing with difficult clients had worn him down. His smile, once genuine, had turned into a mechanical expression, one he used to mask the anxiety gnawing at him every time he faced the demands of his superiors. The more he sold, the more he was expected to sell. And soon, it wasn't about providing excellent service or building relationships with clients. It was about the numbers, the commissions, and the constant pressure to outdo himself. His patience had worn thin, particularly when it came to people who didn't look like they could afford what he was selling. The dealership was filled with customers who were all about appearances. Flashy clothes, expensive shoes, and designer sunglasses. The kind of people Dawson was used to working with. And then there were the others, the ones who looked like they were just browsing or wasting time. Those were the customers Dawson dreaded, the ones who wasted his time and didn't follow through on buying anything. On this particular day, his patience was running low. The phone rang incessantly, his assistant was nowhere to be found, and the floor was buzzing with customers asking questions he didn't have time to answer. It was one of those days when everything seemed to be out of control. And when Keanu Reeves walked in, Dawson just didn't have the mental energy to deal with another non-committal buyer. Keanu, on the other hand, was everything Dawson wasn't expecting. He wore a simple jacket, jeans, and sneakers. Nothing that screamed wealthy celebrity or car enthusiast. Just a guy walking into a dealership looking for a car. Keanu had been many things over the years. An actor, a philanthropist, a martial artist. But today, he wasn't here to put on a show. He was here for a very simple reason: to buy a car. Keanu was a quiet man, one who preferred staying out of the spotlight when possible. He'd been famous for decades, but he was still down to earth. He didn't need to be flashy or extravagant to prove his worth. He'd already made his mark on the world. Today, he was simply a man trying to buy a car without all the fanfare that usually followed him. He knew what he wanted. He didn't need to be treated like royalty, nor did he want to be treated like just another ordinary guy. He didn't mind blending in. It was how he'd always been. He'd had enough of the glitzy Hollywood lifestyle, the constant cameras, and the superficiality of fame. That's why, when he stepped into the dealership, he wasn't wearing a designer suit or driving the most expensive sports car on the lot. Instead, he was just Keanu, an average guy walking in to make a big purchase. But the truth was, This wasn't just about buying a car. It was about something bigger, something Dawson could never have imagined. Keanu Reeves wasn't just any customer today. He was the new owner of the dealership. But Keanu didn't want to flaunt his new position. He wasn't about making dramatic entrances or causing a stir. His goal was simple: to look around and maybe make a purchase. To him, this was a new chapter, an unexpected opportunity that had come his way, but one he wanted to approach with humility. The last thing Keanu wanted was to be treated differently because of his fame. And so, he slipped into the showroom with little fanfare, ready to explore. But to Dawson, Keanu was just another ordinary guy. And that's where the trouble began. It was mid-afternoon when Keanu walked in, hoping to take a look at a new model. The sun was still high, casting long shadows on the showroom floor. A few customers were milling around, talking to the salespeople about the latest deals. Dawson sat at his desk, absent-mindedly typing away on his computer, his mind still 1,000 miles away from the showroom floor. The sound of the bell jingling went unnoticed as Keanu entered. Keanu glanced around, taking in the luxury cars on display, each one a work of art. But he wasn't here for the most expensive model. He was here for something practical, something that would fit his needs. He wandered over to a section of the showroom where a few mid-range cars were displayed. It was peaceful, quiet, almost too quiet. Dawson looked up from his desk, his eyes scanning the floor for any sales opportunities. He didn't immediately notice Keanu. Instead, he picked up the phone, muttering into the receiver, frustrated at the lack of support from his team. The stress of the day was beginning to weigh on him. Keanu took a step closer to the display of cars, eyeing the specifications of one of the models. He wasn't interested in the bells and whistles. He just needed a reliable car, one that wouldn't draw attention or complicate his life. As he ran his fingers over the sleek surface of the car, Dawson finally looked up. His eyes skimmed over Keanu, and in that split second, he made a snap judgment. Another tire kicker. Dawson's demeanor shifted immediately. He put down the phone and made his way over to Keanu, his steps brisk, almost impatient. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked in a tone that was polite but laced with an edge of frustration. He didn't see anything special about the man in front of him, and he certainly didn't see the potential for a sale. Keanu glanced up and smiled softly. "Just looking around. I've been interested in this model for a while." Dawson's gaze flicked to the car, then back to Keanu. He sized him up quickly, a plain guy, not the type to buy something this expensive. He opened his mouth to make a snarky remark, but stopped himself. He needed to stay professional. Right. I'm sure it's a great car. But, if you're not really looking to buy today, there's not much I can help you with." Keanu wasn't fazed by the comment. He could sense the manager's impatience, the way he looked at him with a mix of indifference and judgment. Keanu was used to it. It happened all the time. People assuming things based on how he looked or how he dressed. But this time, it didn't matter. He wasn't here to argue or prove anything. "Actually, I'm very interested," Keanu said calmly. "Just need to check some details." Dawson's frustration simmered beneath the surface. He didn't have time for this, another customer wasting his time. We get a lot of people just browsing. It's fine. But I can't really spend all day showing you cars if you're not seriously interested," he replied sharply, not realizing he was digging himself into a hole. Keanu remained calm, keeping his voice steady. "I understand. I'm just looking to see what fits." Dawson crossed his arms, clearly irritated. He was trying to push the man out of the showroom without being too obvious. "We don't have all day," he said, almost under his breath. "You should probably come back when you're ready to make a decision." The tension was rising now. Keanu, still calm, began to feel the unspoken dismissal, the manager's impatience building with each passing second. Dawson wasn't interested in helping him, not with the attitude he was giving off. But Keanu wasn't the type to make a scene, so he just nodded and said, "I'll think about it." The situation was escalating, though Dawson wasn't aware of it yet. The rising tension between the two of them was becoming palpable, and neither of them knew where it was headed. Keanu had done nothing to provoke this, but the manager's assumptions were pushing the situation to a boiling point. It was the comment that tipped everything over the edge. Keanu had been calm, even when the manager's impatience was becoming clear. He had no desire to escalate the situation, but the condescension in Dawson's voice was unmistakable. As the conversation continued, Keanu began to feel more like a nuisance than a potential customer. The more Dawson spoke, the more dismissive he became, treating Keanu like just another tire kicker wasting his time. It wasn't that Keanu minded, he had dealt with worse, but something about the manager's tone started to rub him the wrong way. It was almost as if Dawson wasn't interested in making a sale at all, but rather in judging people based on how they looked. Dawson, for his part, was growing increasingly frustrated. He had already had a long day, and here was another customer, clearly out of his league by Dawson's standards, making the entire process more complicated than it needed to be. The showroom floor was starting to feel more like a pressure cooker, and Dawson could feel his patience running out. As he walked back toward his desk, he glanced over at Keanu, who was still casually inspecting the cars. Then it happened. Keanu was browsing through the brochures on one of the models when Dawson saw something that made his blood boil. The man had his hands on the car as if he owned it, flipping through the pages without a care. In Dawson's eyes, it was the last straw. He didn't care if the man was serious about buying a car. He was just being rude now. Who was this guy to act like he was above the process? To act like he could just stroll in and waste Dawson's precious time? "What's the matter with you?" Dawson snapped, his voice rising with irritation. "You think you can just waltz in here and take your time without any intention of buying? That's not how this works." Keanu, surprised by the sudden outburst, looked up. His eyes were calm, but there was a slight twinge of disappointment behind them. He hadn't expected this kind of treatment, especially from someone who was supposed to be running the dealership. "I told you, I'm interested," Keanu replied quietly, trying to keep his cool. But Dawson wasn't listening. He was already too far gone. "I've got work to do. If you're not serious, I don't have time for you," he shot back, his voice sharp and condescending. Keanu could feel the tension rising in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "I don't appreciate being spoken to like that." Dawson stepped forward, his face red with frustration. "You don't appreciate it? You're the one wasting my time. Get out of here if you're not actually going to buy anything." Keanu stood still, his expression unreadable. Was it worth trying to explain? Should he just leave? Before he could make up his mind, Dawson was already walking toward him, gesturing toward the door. "Leave now. You're not welcome here." The words hit Keanu like a slap in the face. He had expected better, but this was something else. For a moment, he stood frozen, unsure of what to do. He could feel the eyes of the few remaining customers on him. The atmosphere had shifted. Dawson had made a scene, and now all eyes were on the two of them. Keanu didn't want to cause a spectacle, but at the same time, he wasn't about to let Dawson get away with this. As Keanu made his way toward the door, Dawson watched him go, still seething with frustration. The nerve of that guy. He'd spent precious minutes, maybe even hours, dealing with a person who didn't even seem serious. The dealership had seen enough of that kind of behavior. People like that were a dime a dozen, showing up, wasting time, and pretending to be interested without ever buying anything. Dawson was already mentally moving on, thinking about his next task when he heard a calm, steady voice behind him. "Wait!" It was Keanu. He wasn't walking out the door after all. Dawson turned around, his irritation still visible on his face. What now? Keanu stood there, a serious expression on his face, his voice quieter than before. "You should know something." Dawson crossed his arms, ready to send the guy on his way for good. "Look, I don't have time for games. Either you're buying a car or you're not. I've got real customers to attend to." Keanu took a deep breath, not backing down. "I'm the new owner of this dealership." There was a long pause. For a second, Dawson thought he might have misheard. "What?" Keanu's calm gaze didn't falter. "I said, I'm the new owner. This dealership belongs to me now." Dawson blinked, his mind scrambling to process the words. It couldn't be true. It just couldn't. The guy standing in front of him, the one he just kicked out, was the new owner? He was trying to wrap his head around it, but the idea seemed impossible. This man didn't look like an owner. He didn't act like one. Dawson's face went pale. He had no idea what to say. Keanu took a step closer, his voice measured. "I'm not here to make a spectacle. I came in to buy a car, not to cause trouble. But after the way I was treated, I think you should know who you're speaking to next time." Dawson stood there in stunned silence, his mouth opening and closing as he tried to form an apology, but the words weren't coming. What could he say? How could he take back what he had just done? He had kicked out the person who now owned the dealership. He had humiliated himself and jeopardized his own career in one fell swoop. Keanu watched him, still calm, still composed. There was no smugness in his tone, no revenge in his eyes. He wasn't here to punish Dawson. But the situation, and Dawson's actions, had clearly revealed something about the manager's character. Keanu could have easily let this slide, but he didn't want to. This wasn't just about the car, it was about respect. "I'll be sure to have someone else take over here," Keanu said, his voice firm. "This is a business, and it deserves to be treated with professionalism. I suggest you rethink your approach going forward." The manager, now realizing the full scope of his mistake, took a step back. He wasn't sure what to do, how to apologize. Should he beg for forgiveness? Should he quit? He couldn't afford to lose his job, but the embarrassment he was feeling now seemed insurmountable. Keanu didn't wait for an answer. With a calm nod, he turned and walked out of the dealership, leaving Dawson standing there in stunned silence. He couldn't believe what had just happened. He had kicked out the new owner. His mind was racing, and the gravity of the situation began to sink in. Dawson had ruined everything, and it was all his fault. The next morning, Dawson arrived early, hoping to get a head start before anyone else noticed his embarrassing mistake. He had barely managed to get any sleep the night before, his mind replaying the events of yesterday over and over. What had he done? How could he have been so careless? The moment Keanu had walked out of the dealership, Dawson had realized the weight of his actions. What had he been thinking? A man of such stature, someone who could buy the entire showroom with a single swipe of his credit card. And Dawson had treated him like a nuisance. A nuisance. He couldn't shake the shame. What would happen next? Would Keanu file a complaint? Would he lose his job? Dawson couldn't afford either. The door swung open, and Dawson's heart nearly stopped. Standing in front of him was Keanu, looking as calm as ever, but now the reality of his presence felt like an impending storm. "Mr. Dawson," Keanu said softly, stepping into the showroom. His calm demeanor made Dawson's stomach churn with guilt. Keanu's presence wasn't aggressive, nor was it demanding. It was simply there, the kind of stillness that could break a man's will. "Mr. Reeves," Dawson stammered, his voice sounding weak. His hands shook slightly as he placed them on the counter, trying to maintain control. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't recognize you, and I made a huge mistake." Keanu walked toward him, his eyes steady, observing Dawson's anxiety. "Yes, you did." The words hit Dawson like a punch to the gut. He had no idea what to say next. His mind was racing. How could he fix this? How could he undo the damage he had done? Keanu paused in front of the desk, his voice still soft but firm. "I'm not here to yell at you, Mr. Dawson. I'm here to understand what happened. Why did you treat me that way?" Dawson swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Keanu's gaze on him. I was frustrated. There have been so many people just wasting time, walking around like they can afford everything, acting like they're serious about buying, and then they leave with nothing. I assumed you were just another one of them." He sighed, lowering his head. "I let that frustration get the best of me." Keanu remained silent for a moment, processing Dawson's words. The calmness in his expression made Dawson feel even smaller. "I see," Keanu said finally. "But you understand why that's a problem, don't you?" Dawson nodded quickly, his hands clenched into fists as he leaned on the counter. I do. It's no excuse for how I treated you. I shouldn't have assumed anything. And I should have respected you no matter who you were. I was wrong. Please. I'm sorry. Keanu's eyes softened, but his words were still measured. It's not just about respect, Mr. Dawson. It's about understanding that everyone deserves a fair chance, no matter who they are or how they look. You may have judged me based on my appearance, but what if I had been a different person? What if I had been someone else who could have helped you? It's a bigger lesson than just a simple apology. Dawson felt a deep, uncomfortable pang in his chest. He wasn't sure whether to apologize again or to try to explain himself, but he knew he needed to understand Keanu's point. You're right, Dawson finally said, his voice quieter now, filled with regret. I let my assumptions cloud my judgment. I don't know who I thought you were, but I didn't give you the chance to show me. And for that, I'm truly sorry. Keanu gave him a slight nod but didn't say anything for a long moment. Dawson couldn't bring himself to look up. The silence was unbearable. Then, finally Keanu spoke again, his voice still calm, but with a hint of something deeper, something Dawson wasn't sure how to interpret. You've been given an opportunity, Keanu said slowly. But you need to ask yourself, what kind of man do you want to be moving forward? Dawson swallowed hard. The question hit him in a place he hadn't been ready to face. What kind of man did he want to be? The kind who rushed to conclusions? The kind who let his frustrations control him? Or the kind who learned from his mistakes, took accountability, and made a real change? Mr. Reeves, Dawson began, his voice shaky. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. I've learned my lesson. Keanu nodded once more, a slight but meaningful gesture. It's not just about learning from mistakes, Mr. Dawson. It's about growing from them. The weight of the conversation settled on Dawson's shoulders, and for the first time in a long while, he felt the full weight of responsibility for his actions. It was more than just an apology. It was about changing how he saw people and how he treated them, no matter who they were. Keanu stood there for a long moment, watching Dawson. The man's apology seemed sincere, but Keanu knew that words weren't enough. The real test would be in the actions that followed. He didn't need Dawson to grovel or beg for forgiveness. He needed to see if Dawson could actually learn from this moment, grow from it, and become better. Here's the thing, Mr. Dawson, Keanu said, his voice still steady. I'm not going to make you lose your job, but I'm not going to let you continue running things like this. You'll stay on, but you need to take responsibility, not just for what happened with me, but for how you treat every customer from here on out. If you want to be part of this business, you need to respect everyone who walks through these doors. Dawson looked up at Keanu, his eyes filled with both relief and gratitude. I understand. I promise. I won't let you down again. Keanu gave him a faint smile, a gesture that carried no malice but offered a quiet approval. Good. This dealership deserves more than just a manager. It deserves someone who can truly lead with integrity. Don't forget that. Dawson nodded vigorously, feeling as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He had been given a second chance, one he couldn't afford to waste. He had learned the lesson the hard way, but it wasn't too late to change. Keanu took a step back, ready to leave. I'll leave you to it, Mr. Dawson. I'm sure you'll do great things from now on. As Keanu turned to walk out, Dawson stood still for a moment, taking in the gravity of the situation. He had made a huge mistake, but now it was time to make it right. He couldn't afford to make the same mistake again. Keanu paused at the door and looked back over his shoulder. And remember, Mr. Dawson, he said with a light chuckle, next time, don't judge a book by its cover. You might be surprised who's reading it. Dawson smiled, a mixture of gratitude and humor in his expression. I won't forget that, Mr. Reeves, I promise. As Keanu left the dealership, the door closed behind him with a soft click. Dawson stood there for a long moment, reflecting on everything that had just transpired. He had been given a rare opportunity, a chance to change, to grow, and to become a better version of himself. And as the morning sun streamed through the dealership windows, Dawson made a silent vow to himself. He would never forget this lesson. As Keanu Reeves walked away, Dawson stood in the middle of the showroom, his thoughts heavy but clear. He had been given a second chance, a rare opportunity to correct his mistakes and grow. The lesson was simple but profound. Never judge someone based on assumptions, and always treat people with the respect they deserve, no matter who they appear to be. Keanu's quiet wisdom had changed him, but it wasn't just about the apology. It was about understanding the power of second chances and the importance of humility in every interaction. Dawson knew he would carry this lesson with him forever, and with that, he had a chance to build something far more valuable than any sale, a true sense of integrity. And so, as the dealership doors closed behind him, Dawson felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that sometimes the greatest lessons come from the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more intriguing tales and life lessons that will keep you thinking long after the credits roll. See you in the next video. See you in the next video. See you in the next video. See you.